Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. Today I have Ahamed Ahamed, who starts his P4 year in a week at the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy. He immigrated to the U.S. back in July 2001 when he was 7. His family had big plans when they arrived, and their father would be joining them in 3 months after they immigrated, but 9/11/2001 delayed his father's immigration for 5 years. Although times were rough, Ahamed could indulge in a profound luxury, education, and this was something he could use as an outlet ever since he was a kid and continues to be one to this day. He enjoys volunteering in his spare time, and he has a strong love for teaching. Ahamed, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me.
Well, everyone's leadership road is a little bit different. Tell us a little bit about your leadership road, maybe starting a bit early, and let us know, some of the leadership positions that you took, especially those outside of pharmacy. I think sometimes we focus too much on being president of this or vice president of that. Leadership opportunities that you've taken as you've grown up before pharmacy school and during.
Absolutely. So I guess we can start maybe in high school, because that was the first time I gained a leadership position, and that was actually through the neighborhood center of Johnson County, where I was elected president of a youth program called the LEAD program. And basically what this program provided was a way for children or people who were interested in college to get exposure to different universities, different community colleges around town, and just get that exposure from early on. So being president, I helped just assist in making this program successful and helping with outreach in terms of just getting numbers to join us. So people from Iowa City West High School, Iowa City City High School, and other people around town. So that was really my first leadership, or I guess you could say an actual leadership position. But after that, throughout my schooling in undergrad and in pharmacy school, the big things that I was a part of was MESA, which is the Multi-Ethnic Engineering Student Association. And in that, I was a tutor, and that's where I actually first fostered my love for teaching, and where I learned, okay, I actually do enjoy this. Because at the time I was also tutoring for chemistry and biology during my undergrad, but I wasn't really enjoying that. It was fun, but it was just students were kind of just in and out, and they just wanted to hurry up and they didn't really care much for the knowledge, but rather they just wanted the grade. But when it came to these children, you saw in their eyes that they were looking for help. They couldn't understand where they were in terms of their academics, if it was just maybe geometry or algebra, because they couldn't figure out which equation to use or how to use it. So kind of figuring out early on that I really enjoyed helping people navigate through academia or different subjects. That's where I kind of first got my appreciation for teaching. And over there I was a tutor, so I guess you can consider that a leadership position. I don't know if it technically is, but yeah, other than that, lastly, a big leadership role that I had was in pharmacy school during my P2 year, and that was helping start the first Toastmasters Club at any college of pharmacy in the nation. And we created the club back during my P2 year, and it has been official ever since. We've had many meetings, and I'm currently the VP of professional outreach, so I'm assisting in that. And yeah, it was quite the journey, but we successfully did charter the club, which is now known as the Pharmacy Communicators Association.
Cool, I like it. So I started Toastmasters around when I was 12. I don't even know if I was allowed to be an official member, but it was down at Geico, down in Chevy Chase, just right by Washington, D.C. And my mom had been a longtime Toastmaster, and so was my dad. So every once in a while, I would see them together at the same conference speaking, and that just really kind of propelled me to get in front of people. But a lot of pharmacy students, pharmacists are introverts. Can you tell me about the road that you've taken from someone who's maybe a little more introverted and how Toastmasters helped you? Because in front of the classroom, I actually had students coming up after me, like, man, this guy knows his stuff. And it was your presentation style and content. But tell me a little bit about that road and how someone who maybe is rocked organic chemistry and did everything they could, but they are absolutely petrified about getting in front of other people.
Absolutely. And that was definitely me, actually, Tony. So going back to, again, the undergrad times, I just remember I had a public speaking course, and I hated it because how nervous I would be just walking up to give a speech. It was probably the most thing that I feared in my life. I just remember my legs would shake uncontrollably. Even if I tried, I would go up there, be like, all right, it's going to be okay. Right when I got up there and I looked at the crowd, I was like, oh, crap. Here we go. So it was honestly something that I was always petrified of. But then, thankfully, I met one of my friends who's actually a colleague of mine at the College of Pharmacy. His name is Ahamed Ahamed, and he's the one who introduced me to Toastmasters. And he told me, we're actually gym buddies, so we used to lift together and whatnot. And he told me, he was like, hey, I go to this thing called Toastmasters. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. What is it about? And, he kind of gave me the spiel, and I was like, public speaking, no thanks. Maybe another time or something. So one day he was just like, no, you're going to come with me. Just come and see how the meetings play out and whatnot. So I decided to join him. And it was actually a club in North Liberty. And when I went, I remember just sitting there and observing different peoples from different professions, different backgrounds. It was a very diverse group of individuals, and they were all standing there one by one, taking turns going up in front of each other, which was, again, considered a safe space, is what the Toastmasters like to call it. It's a place where you can learn how to communicate, how to enhance your public speaking skills, your leadership skills, and things of the sort in this room where it's like everyone's coming here to learn. And because it didn't feel like that classroom setting, which was what I was exposed to in the past, and that's what made me petrified. I was like, I know these guys. Like, they know me. They might be like, oh, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he being all weird up front? Or whatever it might have been. But I remember at Toastmasters, that wasn't the case. Everyone knew what the goal was. You're paying money from your pocket to come here to become a better public speaker. So I remember I loved the environment, and slowly but surely I just kept going to meetings, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'll go up there. So went up a few times, gave my spiel, and gave just some speeches for my own self. And then thereafter, Muhammad was like, so what'd you think over time? And I was just like, wow, this is definitely great. And he's the one who actually proposed. He was like, why don't we just start our own club at the College of Pharmacy? And I was like, hey, that's not a bad idea. Why not? So we proposed it, and he went to the dean and whatnot. And now we're here, Pharmacy Communicators Association.
Awesome. Well, I know Dean Latender is a pretty powerful speaker. When he speaks, people listen, and I think that right now, as we're looking for advocacy, we're trying to articulate our value to Congress, especially as we work for provider status. What would someone do now to get involved? So can anyone get involved pre-pharmacy, or do you have to be P1, P2? How would someone get involved in the club, and what's happening to the club now that you're going to be a P4?
Yeah, so right now we just actually elected the new exec board for our club at our college. And what we're doing is there's other colleges around, so Drake University, and I'm not sure who else, but I'm sure there's other colleges that have reached out to us and asked, hey, we like this whole Toastmasters thing that you guys initiated, and we're pretty interested. So we're kind of going around, or as the exec team, we're trying to help other colleges start their own clubs. But as of right now at the college, it's for P1s through 4s, faculty, as well as graduate students at the college. So if you're at the chemistry or the med chem department, or if you're getting your PhD or whatnot, because a lot of them are also the introverted type of personality, so they also want to get better at their public speaking skills. And even our own professors, it surprised me, but one of our faculty mentors, Vern Duba, he's actually been a big advocate of Toastmasters, because he was like, there's a lot of professors who they know how to teach, but they're not necessarily good public speakers. So even though you think one and two go together, it's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take it back to the LEAD program a little bit. This is something you do outside of the college, but obviously extremely important to you. I want to talk about my experience a little bit when I started college. I started college in the summer after my junior year of high school. I took Calculus 1. I was about to fail it, so I withdrew, then took Calculus 1 again in the fall and got a B, and then I failed Calculus 2. My dad's an immigrant. My mom never went to college. Both are very articulate speakers now because of Toastmasters. Both are successful in their professions. But I didn't really understand what college was. So how do you explain to someone in the lead program what college is, especially if you're talking about something like an English major or a math major, or what the value is of going to school? And then we'll talk about the value of pharmacy.
Absolutely. So outside of this whole lead program, I got to partake in volunteering for the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, where I was working with the sect called Boys Achieving Manhood. And there I was helping at City High School with 8 different individuals, where we kind of just helped them figure out what they want to do with their lives, because they weren't at the greatest place. Most of them had, personal issues, or academically they were just not very strong, or whatever it might have been. They all had their own circumstances, but nonetheless, we tried to just figure out how can we get these kids to understand what college really is. Because they kind of saw education, and a lot of people do see education this way, as something that is a burden. And that's a problem, because it's all about perspective, if you ask me. So when you look at a child, or look at an individual who's interested in learning more, who wants to be successful, it's like, okay, I can kind of give you a roadmap or a blueprint, but what I need you to understand is school and education is not a burden. What you need to see it as is an opportunity. So that's kind of the approach that we tackle. That's the approach we went about in terms of helping mentor these kids, where we were just like, okay, so if you see school as a burden, if you see studying as a burden, what if I can just change your perspective and make it seem as an opportunity? Because it's all about perspective again. So they saw slowly but surely, at first, like, I don't want to give out exact numbers, but let's just say the cumulative GPA with all the kids that we were working with was really low, and we saw progression. Why is that? And it's because they had people like myself and other mentors around to reach out to, and even tutoring, because they started understanding, okay, I don't just graduate high school and go out and work a minimum wage job to become successful. Because that's something as well. It's like, okay, how do you perceive success? So that's something we would ask them. It's like, what is your perception? So they're like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I want to make 6-figure salary. I want to achieve the American dream. So it's like, okay, how do you achieve this without going to college? And some of them gave me honest answers, and they were like, I want to be a rapper. I want to do this. And I'm just like, okay, that might be a plan A, but statistically speaking, what are the chances of you becoming a rapper, or what are the chances of you becoming an athlete, and going on if you don't really have the talent there? And if you do have the talent, I'm not going to, break or destroy your dreams, but rather let's just look at what are possible ways for you to navigate the success that you want to achieve by instead looking at the way that other people have done it, or where you're statistically more likely to achieve it. So it was like, okay, so let's just kind of change their perspective so they see education and opportunity to reach their dreams and their successes.
Well, I know that students would love to do things like this, but I know that when I would always try to get somebody involved in something, it was always, I just don't have time. I just don't have time. How do you create a both-and approach to time management within pharmacy schools so you can both get this fulfillment from the actual process of being in pharmacy school, instead of, okay, well, I'm just going to suffer during pharmacy school and then my life begins after that? But no, wait, it begins after residency. No, wait, it begins after my first couple of years. No, wait. So there's just kind of this pushing it off. Yeah. But it sounds like you're enjoying and finding a tremendous fulfillment during pharmacy school. How do you find the time? Do you sleep?
Absolutely. No, I definitely get my sleep. You can ask anyone about that. But, it's the real thing that I could say is, if you know you have a passion for something outside of pharmacy school, that you can make some out, because there's 24 hours in a day. And of that, let's say, according to the gold standard, you need 8 hours of sleep. You still have another 16. And of the 16, if you're a pharmacy student or a professional student, a college student, you're going to be in class 4 to 5 hours a day. All right, let's subtract that. And then as well as maybe 4 to 5 hours a day studying. You still have an additional amount of time to kind of choose what you want to do with it. You can lay around bed, just watch YouTube videos or just Google things and waste your time, play video games. And don't get me wrong, I like doing those things, but it's like, okay, so academics is a priority of mine, right? And then I also have other priorities because I'm passionate about them outside of school. So I was passionate because I felt indebted to my community. I felt like I had to give back to these kids, because without mentors that helped me get to where I am, I wouldn't be here today in this podcast or even in this rotation. So with all that being said, it was just kind of like, I knew I had the passion for it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make the time for it.
Okay. So a lot of people may not know what it is to grow up poor. My parents kind of took that hit for me. So when we were really young, my parents moved us into a wealthy neighborhood, but we were so poor, we had sheets on the windows. We couldn't afford drapes. We couldn't afford anything nice for the house. He just knew that if he could put a house in a nice neighborhood, then I would be with students that were much, of a higher caliber. And then the bar was just at a different place. So it wasn't, when I went to high school, it wasn't, if you're going to college, it's which college you were going to go to. And the bar was just so much higher. Tell me a little bit about what it is to really struggle in maybe areas where the sentiment isn't we're all going to college.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. And I just remember, like, growing up, obviously, we didn't have much to appreciate in terms of a big house or anything. We always lived in a 2-bedroom apartment when we first immigrated, and then a 3-bedroom apartment a little while after that. And it was my 2 siblings, my mother and I, till my father joined us. But just kind of expanding from what she said in terms of living conditions and kind of prioritizing academics, because as an immigrant family, the number one thing that our parents, and most kids could probably say the same thing that I can, is that they instill this thing about education. Education, education, education. And as a kid, you're kind of hard-headed at first, and you're just like, school, no, I'd rather go play outside, I'd rather do this. And we saw winter, and I was like, oh, dang, it's kind of cold. Maybe I should stay inside and study. So things like that kind of helped a little bit, of course. But it was, again, just seeing how they struggled and how they came. Because as an immigrant, they don't tell you when you're overseas, hey, when you get to America, you're not going to be living in a big house with a nice car. It's going to be rather, hey, you're going to live in an apartment where drugs and alcohol are prevalent all around you. And your kids they have no guarantee to kind of make it even out of high school. So this was kind of a reality check for my parents and a lot of people around us. And I have many anecdotal experiences with different people and individuals who didn't make it to where I got to make it today, including just even close friends. So it's unfortunate that that's the cards that they were dealt and everything when they got here, but it was just the reality of it. So me being able to see what they struggled through, and I kind of struggled through it as well, but I didn't work 80 hours like my mom did. I was at home and she just made it, hey, pay attention to your schooling, pay attention to your schooling. That's all I want from you. Just show me your report card at the end of the trimesters through high schools and middle school. Then in college, same thing. Like, I don't know many college students that after each semester they show their parents their grades. But I know at our house it was like
the law actually prevents it.
Yeah, exactly. But at our house it was like, hey, I just want to make sure you guys are doing well, and that was their only guarantee. So that was the way that we were raised up, and I know a lot of people could say the same thing, but it was just, again, being able to appreciate things, because it was like, hey, this is a country where meritocracy is based off academia, where you can go as far as you want, as long as you do well in school. So I remember I hated, like in undergrad, I was like, I just want to go to pharmacy school. But I remember struggling through class, and I was like, why am I doing this? And just reminding myself, hey, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Remember how much your parents went through when they first got here. So kind of just having that at the back of my mind at all times, especially when, taking OChem 1 with microbiome and bio 2. Like, those semesters, they were so tough. Like, it was definitely not easy, but I was just like, man, I definitely need to do this so I can not only pave the way for myself and my family, but rather the next generation to come, for them to have mentors to look up to.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about network. I think that as pharmacists, it's kind of a shame that as we graduate, we actually go to our individual residencies or individual jobs, and all of this, collaboration and doing things in groups and together kind of dissipates, and we don't really have groups going to like a residency or a think tank or things like that. When my dad came here, he was the first of his brothers and to come here, so he took the initial hit, had the biggest learning curve, but there are always people in his Hispanic community that really helped him and that guided him. How have some of the people in the immigrant network that you've been in helped you? How have the mentors helped you? And then even just with places to stay and things like that during APPEs, how are you kind of tying into that network that's really sounds like it's helping you a lot?
Oh, absolutely. Wow. So it's actually it's awesome. Like, the majority of my friends are outside of pharmacy school, and I'll be the first to admit, like, I do have my friends that I met at school, which is great, but the original friends that I made when I first came to the country and everything of that sort. It's just kind of like we kept this bond together. And the majority of them are Sudanese American because we have such similar backgrounds. Our parents came here with nothing, and we all have this hunger for success. So growing up, it's like we kind of kept each other accountable. And having them now, obviously, in retrospect, we weren't thinking about what was going to happen when we were in college and moving forward. But I have friends that are engineering students here in Ames, Iowa. I have friends that are studying business. Some friends that are in medical school, like including my younger brother. My sister's studying political science. It's just this huge amount of diversity that's amongst all my friend group, as well as now I can consider it my network, because they just overlap really well on top of one another. But it's really helped me out because, for example, right now I'm staying in Ames, Iowa with a couple of my friends that I knew from way back when I immigrated here back in the early 2000s, because then they didn't even hesitate. I was like, hey guys, I'm going to be in Des Moines, Iowa for 5 weeks and I don't have a place to stay. Can you guys help me find a place? They were like, oh, just stay with us in our apartment. I was like, well, that's kind of, it's 3 guys, a 3-bedroom, two bathroom. And I'm just like, I don't want to really. They're like, no, you're staying with us. So they didn't even give me a choice. So that's just the friendship that we have, and even like the network. And in terms of professionalism and in terms of just development, self-development, we all keep each other accountable and we keep each other motivated. And that's the thing. Anytime someone succeeds, we all succeed together. And that's how we've always looked at it. So when a friend of ours is graduating from a different state or a different city, we're all going out there for his graduation. And if someone's struggling or someone's having an issue, we'll help them find a resource to make sure that they succeed or surpass this issue that they're having. So that's just kind of how this friend group ended up being now my network. And I believe that I'm just going to always have them right by my side. They're all my brothers and sisters, basically.
That's amazing. I'll tell you one more story about an immigrant network that I heard of. I didn't see it myself, but so it used to be that in Maryland, the association would go down to the state house, say, these DIR fees are really hurting us and this and that. But there was an Indian American network in Maryland of 85 pharmacist owners. All of a sudden, the group went from 1 to 85, or from the representative and the attorney, so 2 to 85, and that kind of collaboration is really what we need, as pharmacy goes forward. So we'll do another interview with you. I want to keep it around 20 minutes, but the one last question that I want to ask you is, what are the things that you would recommend for somebody that's just getting into their P1 year to make the most out of the 3 years that you've had? Because you're 2 days away from your final year in pharmacy school. But if you could go back and make it, I don't want to say more meaningful, but make it more tied to what you knew was going to come in, what recommendations would you have for a younger pharmacy student?
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing, looking back to P1 year, is I'll tell myself, hey, Ahmed, don't focus solely on grades and your classes. Go out there and find other things to do at the College of Pharmacy. Because for me, I was involved with all these different organizations, everything beforehand, so I kind of stuck with them. But once I got to the college, I was like, all right, this is it. I have 4 years, and while I'm here, all I'm going to do is study, get the best grades that I can to make sure I get that degree. Because that was my only, that's the only thing that I saw was that I would get value of or value from at the college, which was not true. And I learned this the hard way because my whole first year, I wasn't involved in any organizations. I joined APHA, ASP, sure. I joined UISHIP or ASHP, our chapter at the University of Iowa, sure. But I was just a member. I wasn't active. I didn't get to expand my network early on. And this was unfortunate. And I realized after my P2 year of taking all the tough therapeutic classes and pharmacology classes, I was like, hey, okay, maybe I need to figure out what it is I want to do. And the only way I can do this is maybe figuring out who's doing this right now or currently and reach out to them. And I didn't have those people to reach out to. But if you're involved with student orgs from your P1 year, like community pharmacy student orgs or hospital pharmacies, you build a network. And I think that's the most valuable thing you get at pharmacy school. Outside of the academic portion of it, it's like, hey, you're going to build connections with people and individuals that after you graduate or before, you can reach out to them and say, hey, I want to do what you do. How do I get there? How can I do it? And that's the thing. And also building friendships. And I think that's a way for you to stay sane. Like I can say, without making the friends that I made during my P1 year, I probably wouldn't have made it out. Because it was, again, we had that whole study group approach when it came to exams. And I needed that. It's because sometimes those therapeutic exams are tough. Not sometimes, all the time.
Yeah.
So make sure just get out there. Don't, even if you're an introvert like myself, just leave your comfort zone and say, hey, I want to be more involved. Get into some student orgs, and don't be shy to even leave and venture out of your college. So even if you're at the College of Pharmacy, go out and see what the rest of the campus has to offer. Because you might be at an entirely new campus or entirely new environment, but there's other people everyone else that's going in is also in the same boat as you are.
Cool. All right. Ahmed, thanks for being on the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders. Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook.